Thank you for being here today. Let me begin with a question. What comes to mind when you hear the word Neanderthal? Perhaps a brutish caveman, grunting and dragging a club. A primitive, dim-witted ancestor lost to time. If that's your image, I'm here to blow it to pieces, because the truth about Neanderthals will absolutely blow your mind. For centuries, Neanderthals have been misunderstood. They've been labeled as dumb, savage, and inferior to modern humans. But recent discoveries have shattered that myth and unveiled a species far more complex, intelligent, and human than we ever imagined. 1. The myth of the brute. Let's clear up the first mystery. Neanderthals were not stupid. In fact, their brains were as large as ours, sometimes even larger. They created tools with precision. They mastered fire. They even hunted massive Ice Age animals like mammoths using sophisticated tactics that required planning, cooperation, and communication. Would a brute do that, too? The artists and the dead. Here's another mind-blowing truth. Neanderthals may have been artists and spiritual thinkers. In Spanish caves, researchers have found Neanderthal cave paintings over 64,000 years old, older than any art made by Homo sapiens. Hand stencils, abstract symbols, red ochre, meaningful marks, and they didn't just create art. They buried their dead in graves, sometimes with flowers or tools. Think about that. Honoring the dead suggests an emotional depth and cultural awareness we long thought was uniquely human. 3. They're still with us. You may think Neanderthals vanished forever, but here's a plot twist. They didn't disappear. They became part of us. Modern genetic research reveals that almost everyone outside Africa has 1-2% Neanderthal DNA. That includes you and me. Their legacy lives on in our immune systems, our hair, even how we sleep. Neanderthals weren't some dead-end species. They were our cousins, and yes, we interbred with them. 4. What happened to them? One of the biggest Neanderthal mysteries is, why did they go extinct? Was it war, disease, climate change? Or did they simply blend into us, generation after generation, until their distinct identity faded? The truth is, we don't know for sure, but what we do know is this: their story isn't one of failure. It's one of survival, adaptation, and shared humanity. So, what does this mean for us? It means we must rewrite the story. Neanderthals were not caveman caricatures. They were thinkers, builders, artists, and survivors. They were not them, they were us. Neanderthals, often misrepresented as slow and unintelligent, were in fact highly capable beings with brains that were just as large as, and in some cases even larger than, those of modern humans. This wasn't just a matter of size. It reflected a cognitive complexity that scientists are only beginning to fully appreciate. Archaeological findings across Europe and Asia have revealed that Neanderthals crafted remarkably advanced tools for their time. These weren't crude stone implements, but carefully shaped and often specialized tools used for hunting, cutting, scraping, and even hafting, attaching stone blades to wooden shafts with natural adhesives and bindings. This level of technological skill requires not only fine motor control, but also the ability to plan ahead, source materials from different environments, and understand cause and effect relationships over time. Neanderthal toolkits, such as the Mousterian industry, show a mastery of flint, knapping techniques that produced blades and points with precision. They understood the properties of different materials and adapted their tools to suit specific tasks. They coordinated group hunts, likely using strategic methods to trap and kill large game like mammoths and bison. This kind of hunting was not random or chaotic. It required communication, cooperation, and shared understanding. Some even suggest that Neanderthals may have had rudimentary language or complex vocal abilities, supported by the structure of their hyoid bones and the presence of the FOX2 gene associated with speech in modern humans. Their intelligence wasn't limited to survival. Neanderthals built shelters, controlled fire, and managed living spaces, indicating a sense of organization. They also adapted to harsh climates, showing a remarkable resilience through Ice Age Europe. All these capabilities point to a species that was not only intelligent, but also deeply resourceful, innovative, and attuned to the demands of their environment. Evidence from recent archaeological discoveries has dramatically changed our understanding of Neanderthals. especially in the realms of art and ritual. Long thought to lack symbolic thought, Neanderthals have now been linked to some of the oldest known cave art in the world. In several caves across Spain, such as La Pasiega, Maltraviso, and Ardels, researchers have found red pigment markings, hand stencils, and abstract shapes dating back over 64,000 years. What makes these finds extraordinary is that they predate the arrival of Homo sapiens in Europe by more than 20,000 years, leaving Neanderthals as the only likely creators. These artistic expressions suggest not just creativity, but also a capacity for abstract thinking, symbolism, and perhaps even a form of early communication or storytelling. Beyond art, burial practices also reveal a striking emotional and cultural depth. Neanderthal remains have been discovered in deliberate graves, such as those in La Chapelle, Aux Saints in France, and Shanidar Cave in Iraq. In some cases, skeletons appear to have been carefully positioned, and in Shanidar, traces of pollen around a body have led some researchers to suggest that flowers may have been placed in the grave. Whether or not flowers were involved, the intentional burial of the dead suggests respect, mourning, and a recognition of life and death, concepts that are central to human consciousness. In addition to burials, objects like pierced animal teeth, pigments, and shells found at Neanderthal sites hint at personal adornment or possibly ritual behavior. These items could have served as jewelry, status symbols, or cultural markers. Such findings upend the old assumption that symbolic thinking and cultural practices were exclusive to Homo sapiens. Instead, they paint a portrait of Neanderthals as a species capable of imagination, self-awareness, and shared beliefs. One of the most astonishing revelations of modern science is that Neanderthals are not just part of history, they are part of us. Through the breakthrough of DNA sequencing, researchers discovered that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbred tens of thousands of years ago, leaving a lasting genetic legacy. Today, nearly all people of non-African descent carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA. This discovery fundamentally changes how we perceive our relationship with them. Neanderthals were not an entirely separate species doomed to extinction. They were our close cousins and, at times, our partners in life and reproduction. The Neanderthal genes that live on in us influence a range of modern human traits. Studies have shown that these inherited segments of DNA can affect our skin tone, immune system, sleep patterns, fat storage, and even our susceptibility to certain diseases. For example, some Neanderthal variants have been linked to stronger immune responses, likely helping early modern humans adapt to new pathogens as they moved into unfamiliar territories across Europe and Asia. On the other hand, some of these genetic legacies may also play a role in modern conditions like allergies, depression, or even nicotine addiction, illustrating the complex and lasting effects of this ancient interbreeding. Presence of Neanderthal DNA in the modern genome is not uniform. Different individuals and populations carry different Neanderthal traits. This suggests multiple interactions over a long period, not just a single event. Genetic mixing likely occurred across various regions and timeframes, blending the lineages of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens in a way that was far more fluid and widespread than previously imagined. The idea that our evolutionary path is a tangled web, rather than a clean split between species, highlights the interconnectedness of ancient human groups and challenges simplistic ideas of human superiority. For many years, Neanderthals were viewed through a lens of scientific bias that painted them as primitive and inferior to modern humans. However, ongoing discoveries have revealed that this perception was both unfair and inaccurate. Neanderthals were not a failed evolutionary branch. They were a distinct type of human, adapted to the challenging environments of Ice Age Europe and Western Asia. Their bodies were stocky and strong, suited for cold climates, and their faces featured prominent brows and large noses, likely adaptations for breathing in dry, frigid air. These physical traits made them look different from us, but biologically and cognitively, they were much closer to Homo sapiens than once believed. They made decisions, built tools, cared for their sick and injured, and lived in social groups. There is clear evidence that they nurtured the wounded, sometimes for years, which speaks volumes about their compassion and social bonds. This isn't the behavior of a primitive brute. It reflects empathy, cooperation, and a sense of responsibility toward others. Their ability to adapt, whether through hunting strategies, clothing, shelter construction, or fire use, demonstrates intelligence and cultural transmission from one generation to the next. Moreover, Neanderthals showed flexibility in diet and resource use. They weren't just carnivorous mammoth hunters. They gathered plants, cooked food, and used natural medicines like yarrow and chamomile. Some evidence even suggests they processed birch bark to make a type of glue for hafting tools, which requires knowledge of heating methods and chemical changes. These are not actions of an instinct-driven creature, but of a deliberate and innovative mind. As more is uncovered, it becomes increasingly clear that Neanderthals were not a lesser species but simply a different form of humanity, shaped by their own unique evolutionary pressures and circumstances. The story of the Neanderthals forces us to reconsider what it means to be human. For a long time, Homo sapiens were thought to be the sole bearers of complex thought, creativity, culture, and emotion. But the growing body of evidence about Neanderthals challenges that idea on every level. They hunted with strategy, crafted specialized tools, made art, buried their dead, and even cared for the sick and elderly. These behaviors demonstrate not just intelligence, but emotional depth and social cohesion, qualities long considered uniquely human. The more we uncover about their lives, the clearer it becomes that the boundary between them and us is not as sharp as once believed. By studying Neanderthals, we are learning that humanity has never been a single straight line of progress, but a rich mosaic of parallel stories. Neanderthals were not evolutionary dead ends. They were successful humans who lived for hundreds of thousands of years across a vast range of environments. Their ability to survive and thrive in harsh ice age conditions speaks to their resourcefulness and adaptability. They innovated, explored, and formed strong communities, traits we admire in ourselves. Understanding the Neanderthal legacy within our own DNA adds another layer to this shared story. It means we carry not only their genes, but possibly echoes of their thoughts, behaviors, and choices. Their extinction, while still not fully understood, does not diminish their importance. In fact, it highlights the fragility and unpredictability of existence, something that all human species have faced. Neanderthals are not just relics of the past. They are a mirror reflecting back to us, a version of ourselves that is both familiar and mysterious. They remind us that the human journey has always been about more than just survival. It has been about connection, innovation, and shared identity across time.